Moving forward, I wanted to talk about the new Music History Museum that is planned. Please tell us about that.
Okay. So it all comes from the Funky Uncle Live. Our format was music and then an interview. And we have some great interviews. And in the beginning, I was just a student of sitting and listening to these musicians talk.
Right.
It wasn't always just about how COVID had affected them. It was about their life, their influences, where they grew up, inspirations, particular albums, where songs came from, etc. You never knew where the interview was gonna go.
Sure.
After seeing so many of the interviews, it occurred to me that we needed somewhere in New Orleans that could take the collective of all of this inspiration, knowledge, history from the living people and from the prior people, and put it together in a curated way that can educate and inspire not only our community but the world. Since New Orleans music has had such a big impact on the entire world. And so I started with the idea of doing a funk museum and doing something smaller, and I talked to anybody who would listen to me. I was introduced to Reed Wick, who is the local Grammy representative, but also a guitar player. He's a guitar player in the Bucktown All-Stars. And we booked Bucktown All-Stars to play the Funky Uncle, and he and I became friends, and we started talking about the idea of doing this. And he loved the idea of doing it, said he'd been trying to think about doing something like this for a long time. And then he introduced me to Bob Santelli, who had left the Rolling Stone magazine to create the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and then had gone and done another 8 music museums after that, including the 3 Grammy museums. And at the time that he introduced me to Bob, Bob was the founding executive director of the 3 Grammy museums, all 3 of which he created. So Bob, Reed, and I talked, and we talked through the idea, and Bob loved the idea, but in Bob's mind, this museum was going to cover all of Louisiana music and was going to be a worldwide institution on par with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And it's become that. And it's become that from a little kernel of a seed of an idea that's been nurtured and matured and fed by many other great people that has evolved into a 120,000 square foot museum across the street from the convention center. It's going to cover all the genres of Louisiana music from Congo Square until today. We've gotten a fair amount of economic support from just local music lovers and friends. The city of New Orleans is behind us. They've given us $1 million. We've been able to do economic planning, architecture planning, all the real estate planning necessary, some spatial planning, curatorial planning. We've got an advisory board of about 45 people who are in the music business and industry, musicians, teachers. Every major university in New Orleans and LSU are covered on our advisory board. And all these people are contributing their knowledge and their experience and their background into the foundation that is making this become what it's evolving into. And I'm getting to work on it, and a lot of other people from the Funky Uncle are getting to work on it, just sort of as stewards of this this idea of New Orleans or Louisiana music, and hoping and trying our best to make sure that this story gets told in a way that is going to do it justice, and in a way that's going to inspire the future. And we're going to do all sorts of new creative things that haven't been done in music museums before, like we're going to integrate live music into the museum experience. So we're going to have a stage where music is being performed all the time that the museum is open. And there are going to be parts of the curated area that are open to the live music performance. And the performances are going to be integrated into the museum-going experience.
Yeah.
And so this is going to give young bands, new bands, a format and an audience, and it's also going to give museum goers the ability to have a type of programming that's very unique, that hopefully will tell the story in a way that's even better received than your traditional museum experience, where you just walk in and read something on a plaque and look at a picture.
So it's going to encompass all of Louisiana, not just New Orleans.
That's right.
And live music. Give us an idea of how, about the size of a project that we're talking about. What size is this?
$160 million, 120,000 square feet.
120,000 square feet.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
It's going to be gigantic.
Sure.
And it's going to be on par with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or the Country Music Hall of Fame. It will. It's estimated to have 712,000 visitors a year, which is more than the World War II Museum, but just a little bit less than the aquarium.
Sure.
To give you an idea about the size of the institution.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I would guess that your involvement, I guess proper, is you're on the board along with the 45 others.
Right. So we have two different boards. We have a board that is the business board that runs the entity. I'm the chairman of that board. Reed Wick is the vice chairman of that board. That has about 10 people on it, maybe 12. Mm-hmm. And then we have an advisory board that's doing a lot of the content creation and work with the subject matter of the museum. That's got about 45 people on it.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Is Funky Uncle going to have a display in there somewhere?
Yeah, the Funky Uncle's going to have. We're planning to curate the music club / restaurant. Will be one space. That'll be a restaurant and a club. It will have things like dinner theater, where you can actually go and have a nice meal and watch a performance. But it won't just be a show. We're going to have 90-minute to 120-minute shows at 6 o'clock at night that tell different stories. For example, you might be able to go on Monday night and see the story of Louis Armstrong, where you will have people who will tell you the story and intersperse music within it. So they'll tell you where he grew up, the proximity to the museum, how he learned to play, what he learned to play, maybe play an early song. Then talk about his development years and how he developed his band and started to travel and started to write, play a couple more of those songs, etc. And it's a type of music programming that we don't really have in New Orleans. And we're really looking forward to being able to use that genre of education as a way to educate people and to entertain them at the same time. So that space, the restaurant and the club, will be the Funky Uncle. And we're gonna curate it like the Funky Uncle.
That's cool.
And then we're gonna have a space upstairs that is very large upstairs that we're gonna have a music curation for up there. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping to do Jazz Fest up there, where we curate the whole upstairs, which is like a private club party room where you can rent it out for occasions, weddings, conferences, things like that. It's going to be indoor and outdoor. You could even have two bands up there playing at a time. It's going to be a really nice space.
It sounds like a real versatile space.
Yes. Well, it's key to the survival of museums and cultural experiences like this, that they have a component that can be used by the outside to generate additional sources of revenue. And so Bob Santelli has been very helpful in showing us what other museums have done in the country to use their space. So it's wonderful for the community to have the opportunity to have a party as small as 100 or 200 people or as big as 1,200 people in the varying spaces that we could have in the museum. I can foresee, on a Friday or Saturday night, 5 years from now, during high time, March, April, tourist season, there could be 4 or 5 different functions going on at the museum at one time.
Gotcha.
You'll have the lobby, you'll have the club, you'll have the upstairs area. It's going to have a theater that's got 250 seats, and all of those things will be integrated into opportunities for people to come in and rent the space, and then also get part of our programming. Because when you come to this museum to have a function, people are going to want to experience our local music, and so that's another way for us to do the same thing the Funky Uncle was doing, and that is putting the right bands with the right people, being able to have the right experience, and make sure the musicians get paid well, and that we have an experience that is economically suitable. A big goal of ours is adequate compensation for the people who work in the museum and the people who provide services for the museum. So I want to try to make an impact also on the value that people place on what they're getting. You know, it's wonderful that you can go to Frenchman Street and see free music. I think that that's a fantastic aspect of New Orleans, but think about the other end of that.
Sure.
You're not paying to go in a club, so that means the musicians aren't getting paid unless you drink, and they're getting a percentage of the bar.
Right.
So on a slow night, they might not be getting paid, or even on a big night, people aren't drinking as much, they might not be getting paid as much. People don't drink as much as they used to. Maybe they drink water more now. You know, it's really tough for musicians. It's hit or miss. It is a nice starting ground for some young bands, but seasoned musicians and even some of the younger musicians, I think, deserve a little bit more respect. So trying to change the value that is being charged and explain to people why you're changing the value that's being charged and how it translates into salaries or benefits or opportunities for insurance or adequate pay, things of that nature. You know, we will employ full-time sound technicians, full-time lighting technicians, full-time stage managers. They will all have apprentices that will be high school kids that come out of school that don't want to go to college, that want to learn a trade. We can put them in a 2-year program, a 3-year program where they can learn lighting, stage, sound, and they'll be able to graduate from that program after having been making a living wage and getting benefits.
Beautiful.
Going out there into the community where they will expect a living wage and they will expect insurance and they'll have a skill that should be valued that way.
Sure.
And hopefully it will work to raise the level of the quality of production and also raise the value that people put on, you know, one of our biggest natural resources.
Sure. I went to Stax Museum in Memphis on vacation, and it's a small operation, a real small place, but I really liked that they sat you down in the beginning and you got to see a short film that kind of informed you about not only what you were about to see, but the history behind what was left. And I think it's super important that museums take the moment that they have with people. You have their attention for such a short period of time, but take that moment to educate them a bit about what it is they're seeing instead of just kind of showing them some eye candy and then, you know, ushering them to the popcorn line or something like that.
Yeah.
You know? So that's really cool that y'all are going to be not only educating viewers of people who are walking through the museum, but also educating people properly with a trade. I think that's excellent.
That's right. And I think it is important too. You know, a good introduction to capture their attention, to give them a summary of what they're going to get ready to see in an entertaining way. And we're already in the process of developing a storyline of how we will do our introduction, similar to what you got at Stax.
Sure.
That's all happening right now.
That's beautiful. The procurement of these artifacts.
Right.
That's got to be a monumental task.
Well, it is going to be a monumental task. We haven't really started at any great level. We're doing a Fats Domino exhibit in October as sort of a coming out show of what we're going to be able to do when we open up the museum, and that's going to be at the Jazz Museum.
Okay.
We're going to accompany that with this format of telling music stories with partly oral history story and partly music. We're calling it symposiums. We're going to have a couple of those.
Right.
One on Earl King and one on Dave Bartholomew. And then we're going to have 3 days worth of music. We're calling that Funk Fest. We're going to do all that in October to sort of give people a taste of what we're able to do. And in the process of trying to get Fats Domino artifacts, we're realizing how difficult it will be. And of course, Bob Santelli was developer of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Part of his job was to go out and get artifacts. And he said that particularly in the South, you know, Southern musicians, there are not a whole lot of artifacts because the people didn't understand and appreciate 100 years ago that these things were going to be valuable, and they didn't hold on to them.
Sure.
And you know, suits, performance gear, things like that, those were sold. They're used by other people. And it is harder. I'm driving to Covington tomorrow to pick up a Fats Domino ticket from I think it was $2.50 for a show that occurred in 1951, something like that. Yeah. A friend of mine just happens to have this ticket signed by Fats Domino.
Wow.
You know, so those things are hard to find. but
it's
it
going
is
to be an
super
inch
cool.
at a time, it sounds like. I
Yeah,
think. Yeah.
an inch at a time. Yeah.
That's fantastic, man. I wish you all the luck in the world. I'm so excited about this, and I realize how big of a task this is going to be. What are your projections for any kind of loose timeline that people can look out?
So right now we're in the funding phase. We're developing, we've developed our plan. We're going out to get funding. Assuming that we get the funding we need, about October or November of 2023, we'll start planning. And that will be the detail architect and engineer planning on how to build the building in the way that is going to house everything. And then the detailed planning on how to take all of this work that we've been doing, planning what's going to go in the museum, and really making it into like what goes in what room, right? The actual curation. That will take all of 2024 to do the planning, both the interior and the exterior planning. And then 2025 and 26 will be construction. And so we should be opening in early 2027.
2027. And you had mentioned the things that you all want to include in this museum. Has that been kind of laid out as far as the contents, the material, and the subject matter?
Well, there have been a couple of different charrette meetings where we've taken many people with broad breadth of knowledge from the music business, and we've started to create an exhibit plan. But that exhibit plan is not like this room is going to have funk music in it, this room is going to have jazz. That exhibit plan is an outline of what should go into the museum.
Like a curriculum of sorts. Yeah,
right now, we've taken each subcategory of that, and we form committees. And those committees are looking into that subtopic. For example, jazz. The jazz committee is going to look at jazz and then make recommendations to the curator on what should be included and covered. And we have people, for example, on the jazz committee who run the jazz orchestra right now, or who teach jazz at UNO, etc. Those people are going to be involved in making recommendations to the curator. Then the curator will work with the property developers on how much space we have and how much space we might need for each topic, and try to fit that puzzle together. And that's going to be challenging.
To say the least, putting it lightly. Wow. Okay. Well, gosh, man, I think we're about covered it. I appreciate your time, man. That's
Thank you, man.
fantastic.
Thanks for taking an interest in it.
Absolutely. All right.